Put pass on that.
My dad has her picture like on the desk, like between the kitchen and the living room, so she looks at it all the time, I'm like. I'm not paying that driveway, not her looking at me, Gotta wait to put the, wait, then we'll pay the driveway.
So there's like regulations. There can be regulations that aren't ordinances, right?
Even then.
Yes, not, but it
Like-
depends.
like-
Dave?
Implemented by.
Make it down here.
Like registering, short-term rentals. Would that be part of regulations?
Well, I think you probably need an ordinance.
Make my grocery list.
We have a good count them now.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Okay, other towns just refer to them as regulations rather than ordinances.
Yeah, and
I don't know what the difference is.
yeah, there may not be, ordinances usually include regulations, so, yeah.
Hi, Dan.
Good evening. Trying to get ready for a snowstorm. I guess it's gonna.
Two more minutes.
Right. He's working on it.
You know, these little owl things are pretty cool, you have to say.
Yeah. I like them. Okay, I am, if you wanna start, I can,
You do a remarkably good job.
these,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been pretty good at following people.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, let me start the recording and then we can.
Okay, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's start this planning board meeting. I don't know exactly what we have on the docket, to the best of my knowledge, so I can bring the
It's not December 12th, it's December 1st,
yeah,
but,
sign. We can do a review of the minutes for November 10th.
Make a motion, we accept them as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
and I just wanna, just wanna note one change. It says November 11th, but it was November 10th, so I'm gonna fix that on the minutes.
And as amended, then
Yeah, okay.
Second,
All right,
all in favor.
all those in favor, the amended minute? All those in-
Unanimous. Wonderful.
That was easy. You got everything signed over there? I signed it about a week and a half or so ago.
Yes.
Did you sign it?
Dan hasn't, and you,
Can you sign-
well, you weren't here at the last
No.
meeting, right? So you don't need to sign it.
No,
You're all set. And yeah, there's no new business, there's no old business. We did receive an application. I think it was like last week, so that'll be on the agenda for January for a new adult use marijuana cannabis retail store where next to Dunkin' Donuts.
Hmm.
So,
Isn't,
How many of those we allowed?
There's, the ordinance allows for 2 adult and 2 medical.
Okay, so we've got the 2 medical.
We got 2 medical and
And
1
one
adult. And that'll be the second adult use,
Right.
assuming it goes through.
So we have the one on Biskie Road.
Yes, that one's medical, I believe, above and beyond.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's medical, and then
Yeah.
we have Big Dave's or whatever,
That,
the one by the hilltop.
Um,
That must be adult,
must be
that one's
medical.
adult.
because then the one right down here on across from First Federal, that's gotta be a medical, I
medical.
think.
Yeah, it's medical.
Did that one further down? Route 1 that we approved a long time ago?
On Upper
Did
Main
that-
Street,
Yeah, did that,
that never happened and the place got sold again.
no, it didn't happen.
yeah, no, I know it didn't happen.
Next to Dunkin' Donuts, where is it?
There was an insurance office in
Yeah,
there.
there's a hairdresser in there.
Hairdresser, yeah.
Yeah, it always changes. I mean, that place is a high turnover. It has a high rent, I think.
So, but so that's coming. It may go to the select board first, it may go to select board after, probably, but. You'll be seeing it, because it's. Needs to go to planning board. Other than that, I don't really have anything new going on.
Okay, I just want to say that, can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that,
So a couple people have mentioned to me, they've been moving out of rentals in town into other places. And they've been saying, oh, our landlord is converting it to short term. And it's still going on in this town, a lot of conversions of long-term rentals to short-term rentals. And
it's true everywhere.
it's true everywhere, and a lot of towns have wrestled with it. Camden last September had a big controversy. They tried to, I guess the mayor of Camden tried to introduce an ordinance that would regulate non-owner occupied short-term rentals. And they decided to just, after much discussion and input from a lot of the people that were impacted by that, they decided to defer discussion to some later date. They kicked the can down the road, but they do have both in Rockland and Camden, they do require registration of short-term rentals that are not owner occupied. So maybe one town requires owner and non-owner occupied
Yeah,
short-term rentals, and then one town only requires the non-owner occupied. So I don't know, I just think it's something that we talked about in the comprehensive planning committee about, at least what we should do at the very least is get a handle on how many rentals we have here, short-term rentals. You can kind of do that just by looking up Airbnb and VRBO.
Probably, yeah.
You know.
Most very likely.
And considering we don't have any hotel in town.
Mhm.
It is a key part of the economy. We need to have some short-term rental stuff going on here. But anyways.
yeah, it's a,
It would be nice to even just from a regulation point of view, to have some way of keeping track of them, making sure they maybe meet certain standards in terms of fire alarms, I don't know, or whatever.
yeah. There's a lot of kind of facets to it, and one of the fire safety, life safety insurance, and it's not gonna come on to the town necessarily, but it's one of those things that, like, if someone gets hurt in your short-term rental, the town's not gonna be responsible, but there's a reason that like hotels have very different standards than apartment buildings when it comes to fire safety, because like when you wake up in the middle of the night in a hotel, like you don't know where you are, especially loud noises. So that's something that I know is important to think about. But then there's also just, we don't distinguish between, currently, James Scott doesn't distinguish between Short-term, long-term, it's just if it's a rental unit, it's a rental unit, and if you rent it for a day or 2 days or a week or a month. Or a year, it's all basically the same. I was actually talking to Andy about it today. Because I think in the comp plan, it talks about regulating units that are rented for less than 4 months. I think kind of the industry standard definition for short-term rental is anything that's rented for less than 30 days. At a time. But I think there's a lot to like unpack and figure like, so what are we talking about when we talk about short-term rentals? And then how do we want to manage it, regulate it? I think registration is kind of a obvious first step. So we figure out like, we understand actually how many there are.
But it seemed to me that
To
we
it.
could put in a registration regulation without it being an ordinance. That seems to be something that the selectmen can do. Don't you think?
Maybe they might be able to have a registration. That's possible. That's possible. I know a lot of towns do, they've looked at it and said like, this is a good source of revenue. So, yeah, you can do it. You just have to register it and, in Newcastle, I think it's $100 a year. So it's like pretty minimal. Some other places it's like $1,000 a year or something like that. But depending on how many we've got, where they are, it's, and then
So-
you mentioned owner occupied, like if it's someone's primary residence and they're renting out a short-term rental, it's different than someone buying a.
So Newcastle
Four,
has
yeah.
a regulation saying that,
They have some, they call it tourist rentals and it's, I don't remember what the definition is. If it's, I think it is something along the lines of like 30 days or less.
so according to like the use tax, that you have to pay if you rent something
Yeah,
for short-term rental.
is this like the
State of Maine.
hotel, the
No, if-
accommodation?
Like if you rent something short-term, you have to pay use tax to the state of Maine.
Okay,
And there's a regulation, like if it's beyond 29 days or something, you don't have to pay it.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just one that the state distinguishes.
Yeah, that's probably like the hotel
Yeah.
occupancy tax that,
Yeah.
that there is. And I, from what I understand, like if you go through Airbnb or VRBO, they do collect that and pay that to the state.
Right,
So it's really just like towns are not in on it. But this is, I think the conversation, because I've heard all different sides from people who I've been speaking to, and it's not just like we need to ban them or we need to not regulate them. So I think we have to kind of figure out like, well, what are we talking about when we talk about short-term rentals? And then how do we want to manage it?
yeah.
Because they're not new to Midcoast, Maine.
Yeah.
I mean.
And one
people-
thing in
vacation
Camden,
rentals
the
forever.
discussion, because there were a lot of people who were sort of up in arms about the non-owner occupied rentals,
Mhm.
short-term rentals, and the owners of these properties were saying, banning us isn't going to solve your affordable housing problem.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That's not,
Yeah, as well as just
Yeah.
one part of the housing
yeah,
issue.
yeah, anyways.
So I was working today to put together kind of like some projects or scopes of implementing the comp plan. What do we need to do to overhaul ordinances or update ordinances? What do we need to do for a housing development plan? And just go through all the recommendations that are in there and see like what kind of coalesces into groups, and that short-term rentals is definitely.
Well, I
On
could
there.
just kind of look at and see what other towns are doing in Maine. I
Yeah,
don't mind, I'd volunteer to make that survey.
okay,
up
that's,
something.
yeah. That's anytime I get together with other planners or managers or anybody from other towns or regions, like, you always ask, because
Yeah, and
everybody's doing something
Woodbury
different.
has had a crisis
Yeah,
of it because they just found that their whole town was getting hollowed out in their school system because nobody could find a place to rent down
Right.
there.
yeah,
I mean, it was
Oh, yeah.
major crisis, and I don't know if it's been resolved at all or
down there, I think I don't know if they passed any, regulations or ordinances or anything like that. I do know that Damascotta and Newcastle are, compared to some of the towns around, have fewer like vacant housing units. When the American Community Survey does, they look for how many households are in your community, how many housing units are in your community, and anything that's not occupied, just like if someone doesn't live there, if there's not a household in it for 6 months and a day, it's vacant. And it could be vacant because it's newly constructed or for whatever, but that's stuff that's short-term rental is, or seasonal use houses is vacant. And Damascotta and Newcastle tend to have less, but as percentage wise than surrounding towns, which I think is, probably because there's jobs and community here. No, there's not jobs and community other places, but this is a service center, especially Damascotta. So relative to other communities, we're not in terrible shape, but it's not helping any housing shortages. But
Okay, and my other point is, what's going on with the big clear cut?
That,
Across from the Belvedere Road, is that the new firefighting
No.
facility, or what?
no, there was a permit for timber harvesting that it doesn't go through us, it goes through to the state, even in shoreland. So
So they can do that big of a clear cut?
Yeah.
What, 50 acres or?
I mean, they could probably do more. I think, it wasn't tree growth, the tree growth tax program. And, the assessor kind of flagged it. I guess they need to update their tree growth plan,
There's no
but,
trees.
well, not anymore. But that's when you have tree growth and a tree growth management, like that's a,
I mean, but that wasn't tree growth management, that was clear cutting. I mean, how can? We don't have a lot of land mass and a lot of, this is a pretty small town. You have a big clear cut like that, I mean, it's gonna have a lot of effect on the surrounding land mass.
But Jenny, you can't go on one hand and say that you want to ban people from doing short-term rentals because of a housing crisis. And then if that wants to turn into a housing development, you can't give them help for clearing it out and put housing in there.
Or are they
You
gonna,
can't have both.
are they gonna?
So you gotta pick one.
Is it gonna be a big?
I don't know, but I'm saying, if that's what it's gonna be, you can't be mad over here because they're doing this and they're mad at them. You can't have both of them.
Well, I know, well, even if you're putting let's say you're putting a housing development in there. Complete clear cutting is pretty irresponsible in this day and age. It's not too
It's
usual.
permitted.
Hey, if we let them put a solar field somewhere, 20 acres, it's gonna look just like that.
Which we signed off on
Exactly.
3 times and they didn't do it,
Yep. We did.
yeah, right.
so.
Not
That's-
bigger than
so-
20 acres.
But the thing is that timber harvesting is all regulated by the state, and I mean, as far as I can tell, it's kind of protected by the state because it's a big industry in Maine. So, except for the shoreland towns, I don't think can really regulate it. Within the shoreland, this Damascotta and has, even before I got here, kind of passed the administration of timber harvesting in the shoreland to the state. So there's not a ton that we can do. Maybe we can make sure it was done according to a plan, but I do think that clear cutting is a timber harvesting practice. It may not be environmentally friendly and responsible, but I think it's something that is allowed even in tree growth and even with a harvesting
How many
plan.
acres did they take down out there?
That I don't know.
That same outfit did my woodlot for me, that did that.
Yeah.
And I was under tree growth.
Mhm.
So when the forester came in, I said, Sam, this is what I want done up there. Leave the hardwood for whatever. They did an unbelievable job.
They did do a nice
But,
job.
but
up there.
that chipping that they did there, that all goes to a biomass place up in Livermore or something, because I am always talking to the crew that's there anyway. So I learned a lot, and they could fill one of those chip trucks in 13 minutes with that chipper.
Yeah.
So it didn't take long for something like that to get flat.
Yeah.
I agree there, but it, you know, they could have left a hardwood here and there. I don't know what that looked like before they went in there. Cause they took
It
what
was-
needed to come down on mine, 40 acres,
Mhm.
and they did a really nice job.
And
I
they
can't
left,
ask,
so,
yeah,
yeah.
you look up there in the summer now and you see a lot of green growth. Of course, you know, that
Mhm.
a lot of the oaks and stuff were left and some came. You know, he went through and did what he's trained to do.
Yeah, that's, I know there's got lots of different ways, you know, practices, and I think usually, yeah, just
So,
clear cutting is not the
What's
best
the name?
practice,
It's
but
like, there's a name for that kind of a harvest.
That's a,
Like it's called
it's, I've seen a lot of
I don't know, it doesn't.
big cutting up north when you see 100,000 acres in one
Yeah,
year.
I've
You
seen
go up there fishing and they say, whoa, that wasn't like that last year kind of a deal.
right,
Yeah, it can go fast and. I thought there was some kind of development going in there, a housing or something, when it was done, but apparently it's just got harvested.
yeah, we haven't received an application. You know, I'm pretty sure that it's owned by Hagar. I think that's the address that it's on under a LLC that just as the property's address is the mailing address for that is Hagar's offices here on Biskie. And he's mentioned that to me, I mean, it's probably been a year now that they wanted to do a housing development there, but we've not received any applications or any new information on that,
It's a
so.
private individual in town. I heard the same rumor.
Yeah.
That they would like to do some housing.
Mhm.
So whether you get
Oh,
something.
okay, so they'll just have a big mud hole, you know, for big housing development, and that'll be great.
It could be. I mean,
Yeah.
So all those people downtown, you worried about, they can go up there and stay.
Yeah.
That's,
Right.
you know, I mean, even if there wasn't housing going in, or, I mean, we don't know, it could just be if someone owns property, and they wanna harvest the timber, they can.
Yeah,
Harvest
as
the
long as it's
timber,
allowable
yeah,
by the state, we've got no ordinances that.
Right.
Do anything with it.
yeah, and assuming that there's more than 4 units that are planned for there, it'll come before the planning board, so. You'll hear about it as soon as we had an application,
And
assuming
if they
that's.
do that, you know, they're gonna plant stuff. They're gonna grade it. Clean it up.
Yeah,
They're not gonna just
Well,
build.
that's when our
houses.
regulations come into where that we can control,
mhm,
correct? When they
Yeah.
come to there, then we can say, you have to plant X, Y, and Z through there or whatever. That's when
Yeah.
our say comes in.
site plan and subdivision and everything, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's, but you know, that Mike Tatler, the code enforcement officer, he mentioned to me that it had been harvested, and he said, okay, you know, it's on the radar.
if nothing happens there, you'll be surprised in how quickly it grows up again,
It goes quick.
if they don't do anything.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
So,
Mother Nature's pretty tenacious.
Yeah.
so,
Okay, anything else? Anybody wanna go home?
Yep. I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Okay.
No, I'm not even gonna go for
Thank
it.
Back in 5 minutes and then we don't have to bother you till after the holiday.
So